You are listening to the web's number one choice in spiritual growth and development. This is Heart Over Ego Radio, a network of shows to provide you with healing and guidance to improve the quality of your life. Check us out on Sundays with the Everyday Psychic Show. Mondays is the Alchemy Sisters. Tuesdays, Radical Spirituality. Wednesdays is Know Thyself. Thursdays, Transcending Love. Fridays, Rain Radio. This is Heart Over Ego Radio. Check us out on the web at facebook.com and Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, Mandee. Happy Tuesday. How are you today?
Happy Tuesday. I am feeling really good. I'm excited because I'm going away for the weekend to hold space and circle with some women. It's called, Weekend Witch School up in Maine. So that's going to be fun, and I feel kind of like a little kid getting ready to go to a slumber party. And, yeah, so I'm all fired up because I'm leaving tomorrow morning at like 4:30 in the morning.
So I'm so jealous. I'm just going to say that. But Corey and I, my son and I, we've actually been talking about, because one of the colleges that he's looking at is Boston University. And so we're talking about making a trip out to Boston and taking a look at the college. And I'm like so excited about that because everything Massachusetts, Boston, and Maine just are my place. I don't know. I've got two places in life that just call my heart. One is Louisiana, and the other place is in that whole Boston, Maine, Massachusetts, Salem area. It's like I need to be there for some reason. I don't know. Never been there. I've been to New York, but never Maine, and I'm jealous. I wish I was closer, and I would go there.
Well, I wish too. We will manifest that in the future. And I'm sure once you get there, you'll have some remembering and some downloads of some past lives. I've spent a lot of time in the Northeast, a lot of lives. So it'll be interesting to see what comes through for you. And yeah, there's a lot of good-hearted women and soul sisters and people who like to gather in circles. So that is going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to hold space and learn all kinds of new things.
Yeah, funny enough, like every year I'm invited to go to, what is it? It's the psychic place in New York. I can't remember. Lilydale, I think is what it is. Like every year I've been invited to go there, and it's like every year it just doesn't work out for me. And I'm like, why doesn't it work out for me? You know what? It doesn't matter why it doesn't work out for me. Maybe it's just not my place. I don't know. Maybe it's just not where I'm supposed to be. I feel like there's something there that is not, I don't know. It's just not right for me. So when you say that, it's incredibly true. If it's supposed to be, it'll be. If it's not, then it won't. So it'll all work out. I am definitely going to Salem, though. I guarantee that. That's on my year bucket list. It's going to happen soon. So.
Awesome. Well, yes, let me know if and when you go to Boston, because I have lots of good friends there, and I love to visit up there. So maybe I'll come get to give you a hug. Yes,
I will get to meet you in person, and that makes me excited. I feel like, one, I just talked to Jenny, and all of the listeners out there. Jenny is one of the Alchemy Sisters with this beautiful woman, Mandee. They're phenomenal people. Aren't you guys, like, didn't you start this? Aren't you, like, the founders of the Alchemy Sisters?
Yeah, we started doing a show on Drew's radio network several years ago, and that's where the Alchemy Sisters birthed from. We knew we wanted to work together and hold space together and have a business together, and it started with the radio show. So we created that, and then when we decided to create our own new network / sister network called Heart Over Ego Radio, the Alchemy Sisters was the first show on it.
Yes, and two wonderful women, but we were just having a conversation about like some of the places that I'm going to be going. I really don't have a clue as to where that was going. I'm having a brain fart, which is fine. But it being so close to Halloween and me loving the scary stuff that I do, I've always loved scary stuff, and maybe it's because I've seen ghosts my whole life. We're going to talk about ghosts today, which makes me excited too.
Woohoo! Happy Halloween, listeners.
It doesn't take much to make me excited. I feel like anybody who gets to like listen and know me a little bit more, they're going to see that it takes very little to make me excited in life. But scary stories, it just makes me so happy to hear other people's scary stories. I feel like we have this, need to be startled or scared, I guess is what I want to say. There's some people who loathe it, some people hate it. But I don't know, I've always kind of loved that part of my life. What about you? Like, do you like to be scared? Do you like to have creepy things happen around you?
No. But I totally know what you're talking about. And I do have, like, I think humans have a sense of thrill for sure. Or, like, when life gets boring or monotonous or something needs to change, I think that thrill can be a way that can initiate that and whatnot. And then, yeah, some people just love it. A lot of people who aren't truly afraid of things and stand more in their power, I notice, like a lot of the more, like, scary things or horror films or murder mysteries and stuff like that. And for me, I was always more of a thrill seeker in the sense of, like, I loved to snowboard and things like that. And I didn't go looking after ghosts too much, although I can remember classic being, 12 years old and using a Ouija board and things like that and, scaring myself more than anything could possibly happen. So for me, it's a little different, but I totally honor that experience. And I know so many people who love to get scared.
See, funny enough, I've actually been watching scary movies since I was like 3. I don't know. I can't even remember the very first scary, but I used to get up in the middle of the night and eat cheese and watch HBO, and my mom had absolutely no clue. So it's not like my mom's a bad mom and she's like, oh yeah, let's watch scary movies. I was watching Stephen King when I was like 2 or 3, and I just loved everything. Funny enough though, movies don't scare me. I can literally count on my hand how many, there's like 3 movies that have ever startled me. And one is because of an experience that I had with a demon that actually was the demon that they showed on the movie. I have seen that particular demon, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I had to turn it off because, when you see stuff and it brings something back, it can open up that door, and I'm not opening those doors. So I shut that door really fast. But the other ones, it's more like I've always had this innate fear of being The Stand. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Stephen King's The Stand in the very beginning, like the plague. I feel like I lived during that time. So being around everybody that you know and love and watching them die and being the only person left alive is like seriously a fear for me. And then on top of that, zombies. Like, it's the same thing. You have everybody who has this crazy virus, they get sick, and then everybody dies, and then you might be a part of this world that is living with zombies. So those are the 3 things that have always, like, kind of given me actual fear in life. Not so much now, but they used to. And as a kid, I actually would not go into cemeteries because of the 1963, 62 version of the Night of the Living Dead, the very first one, the black and white one. I would not go into cemeteries because I thought that zombies were going to come out and get me as a kid. So.
That's funny. I took it hardcore. I definitely, with all my witch wounds and everything, I was just always afraid of getting, like, kidnapped, raped, and killed. So all of those types of ones used to scare me the most, and, like, that's what would put the most fear in me. I've since overcome that fear and anxiety. I did that a lot through working with angels and stuff, but I was always really afraid of that. So, like, what's that one show? SVU? Like, yeah, that could send me into a tizzy for days. Or, like, I'd go visit a city and be like, oh, my God, somebody's going to snatch me right through, like, one of these doors, and no one's going to know because there's so many people here. And, like, I'd get, like, so worked up. So that would scare me.
See, that actually, that's more me now. And I actually don't have a crazy fear of it. But at the same time, when people ask me if I'm scared, I'm like, when it comes to ghosts, demons, entities, whatever, it doesn't matter. Spirits in general do not cause fear in me at all, period. They just don't. I could sit in a room, I could sit in a, like, old sanitarium with the ugliest energies and be completely cool in a darkened room by myself in the middle. Like, just sitting there. I could be fine there. Put me into another place where, like, people are that are crazy, actual people that, are murderers or whatever. Their energy terrifies me. So it's almost like I'm more scared of humans than I am of spirit. And people are like, well, I don't understand that because, well, yeah, I mean, like, spirit doesn't harm me. So
way more scared of humans.
There is a legitimate fear in some of the crazy that you see today, and spirit doesn't do that shit. Like,
no, when I go camping, I'm not afraid a bear is going to get me. I'm afraid an axe murderer is going to come.
Right.
And that really happens. Like, even when I moved to Boulder, Colorado, there was like a couple, it was in the paper that like they were hiking up near Netherland, Colorado or something, and some guy came and like tied them up. And luckily, like they were engaged, and one of the fiancés got away and then was able to like get help. But they were gonna just like gut them like fish. That's what I'm afraid of.
See, I always tell people, one, I won't put, like, even when I'm investigating, because I do investigations and stuff on the weekends, even in investigations, if I go into a space where I'm not feeling it, I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing it. Like, I won't do it, because if the vibe feels off to me, there's definitely a people vibe, and you can feel people. Like, you can feel that ugly energy, and sometimes you feel that going, and I'm like, nope, See, I've seen movies, and I know how this ends, and I'm not going to be that girl. Y'all go in and have fun. I'm going to stay here in the car where it's running, and I can leave your asses when shit goes down. That's not how it's going to go with me. So, yes, that's my life. I'm so much more afraid of humans than I am spirit. So.
And when you were talking about scary movies, I did think of one that really freaked me out, because all those other ones, it's like, okay, yeah, axe murderers, whatever, Scream was really popular when I was a teenager, things like that. But the one that freaked me out was Final Destination, because I always have visions or like get scared of or like feel like the type of terrorists that we could have or control we could have in the future is because of like technology and energy and things like that, or like major energy grids for cities getting attacked. So like there's this like one scene where like there's all this electricity kind of going through the shower, and it's holding them in the shower, and they're like burning to death, and like all these things that happen, and I'm like, oh my god, like that one freaks me out the most. I still am like, oh, if I went and saw that, I'd probably be like, oh no, that opened up a can of worms.
See, it's funny because like I will not drive. Ben and I just had this conversation with Corey, because he's going to be driving soon, and I was like, I will not drive behind any vehicles at all that have big long poles or sticks or anything, nothing. I was like, I've seen Final Destination, I know how it ends, and nice try, Death, because there's nothing for me.
That pole is not coming through the windshield at me. I am protected by my archangels. Thank you very much.
So yeah, completely. I understand that. Just had that talk like yesterday, so that's very funny. So listeners, today we are going to be talking about scary stories, and Mandee said that she had one, which excites me. I'm going to let her tell one first. I have several, so I'm not exactly sure which one I'm going to share with people, but I'm going to let Mandee share hers first when we get ready, and then afterwards, if there has been anything that has happened in your life and you have a scary story yourself that you would like to call in and tell us about, and possibly get because what we talked about is how when something happens, and actually this pertains to gifts too, and I'm sure you understand that, Mandee, especially with your clients. People have this fear of spirit and fear of what the unknown is or what they're not talking to, and that's healthy, because you have to know you're protected and grounded and you're doing things correctly. But when you're a child and you're gifted and you see, feel, and experience all these things, and even into your adult life, a lot of people, a lot of my clientele particularly, I've noticed, do not want to open to spirit because it scares them. And so when they hear that bump in the night, or they hear somebody walking around, or something happens to them, or they see an apparition, or they see somebody in their death state, particularly that one's one that really freaks people out. When you see that stuff, it really startles you, and it's almost like something clicks in you, and you don't want to open up to your own gifts because there's a fear behind it. And so that's really why we're having this conversation. It's because there are different ways in which spirit talks to us and how they communicate with us. And it's a moment for Mandee and I to kind of come together and teach you guys how to understand what they were really trying to say in that moment, or why they maybe were following you or being a part of your life, or what it was that you actually saw. Because as we were talking before we got on this show, spirit is kind of like spirit and us. We're all like onions. We're Shrek, essentially. We're like onions, and so there is this layer process to us, and within these different layers, there's different feelings, different vibes, and then we have to learn to peel back those layers to get through to what the real meaning behind spirit is. Because especially if you're seeing an earthbound ghost versus somebody who's crossed over, you are going to get what it is that they know how to share, which is not a lot of information. They know how to give you something that they feel in that moment, or that they felt prior to death, or whatever. And so what you're literally getting is that outer layer. You're not getting those inner layers of it. So it's kind of a moment for her and I to come through and teach you guys maybe how to open up yourself and understand what it is that you're experiencing, so maybe you're not so fearful in the future. So if you do have calls pertaining to spirit information, in the sense that you see, receive, and understand, but don't know how to open up because of fear, today would be the day to give us a call. And please refrain from giving us calls based on, wanting to know love life, or wanting to know when you're going to get the job, or anything else. This is just pertaining to today and what we're talking about. And we welcome you guys to share your stories with us. So maybe we can help you relieve some of that maybe weight that you've been carrying on your chest regarding the fear that you have and your gifts and why you don't want to open those. So Mandee, are you set to share your story?
I am, and I do invite our listeners to call in, and I want to hear some of their ghost stories too. Mine's kind of fun and kind of classic. Well, I have several actually, but this one, when we were talking about today's show, popped in my head. So when I was like probably 13 or so, I went to this weekend retreat with a bunch of other like middle schoolers, and it was I grew up in Vermont. I grew up in New Jersey and Vermont, but I went to like junior high school, and college in Vermont. So that big chapter was all there. And I went to the Vermont Police Academy. It was a really old building, and prior to that, it had been all kinds of different facilities. But at one point, it was like a tuberculosis treatment center. So, being 13, word's going around that the place is haunted and we need to watch out for a ghost. And there's a ghost named Mary, of course. It's always Mary in a white dress, right? So the story was that there was this nurse Mary, and she was really nice, but she got killed because she was trying to give a patient a treatment, and it backfired, and she got some sort of injection that she wasn't supposed to have, or like a tray of injections. I'm not really clear. Either way, she died and haunted the place, supposedly, according to all of these junior high kids. So I'm sharing a room with two girls that I don't know, because they kind of like randomly pair you up. And so this one girl is really into ghosts and spirits, and she's like, I really want to try to contact this ghost and talk to her. Like, what do you guys think? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. Like, we could try. Like, I'll hold the space. Like, I was curious, but not like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, I don't know, maybe it's at peace. Like, I was thinking of all these different things in my 13-year-old head. So she starts talking to it, and I got this really cold feeling. And I was like, I just feel really cold and really sad. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. And so then this other girl is like terrified. She's like crying. I'm like, we should probably stop this, to this other girl. I'm like, she's really not having it. And like, I don't know. I don't really want to like keep going with this or like get in trouble. And the girl's like, no, I feel like she's coming. I feel like she wants to talk to us. And she's like, please show me a sign. So in the middle of the beds, there's like these three, single beds. It's kind of dorm style, but there's like a nightstand with one of those classic like green reading lamps. It had like the gold brass kind of handle, and then curls up over into like a hook, and then hangs like this like glass half green shade kind of thing. I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about, but they're like these classic like reading lamps. So with the green glass on it, all of a sudden, like, we start to talk, we almost give up, and all of a sudden this grass starts to turn, and it's like and does like a 180 and flips upside down, and then all of a sudden the lamp went flying off the table. And we all just like screamed, and the girl who was doing it started crying, and then the poor other little girl was like hysterical, and then I think we did get in trouble. But I just remember sleeping with my eyes open all night. And then that was the end of that story. But flash forward 2 years, I was now like a counselor at this camp thing that I was going to, and I kept hearing this girl crying at nighttime. And I went around, and I was knocking on the doors, and I was checking on all the people, all the like campers and the people who were there. And nobody seemed to be crying. I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, everybody was either, like, dead asleep, like a really good faker, or, like, not crying. And we're very confused by me asking. And so I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning, and I heard it again. Then the next night, I didn't hear it at all. Then the night I went to leave, or the afternoon I went to leave, I was just me in my room, and all the other rooms were cleared, and I was like the last one leaving the floor, and I heard the crying again, and I'm like, what the heck, and I'm probably like 16, 17 at this time, like, what the heck is this? So I walk out to my car, and I'm putting my stuff in my car to drive back home. I had a license at this point. I was in high school, but I had a license. And I look up at the top floor. There was like 3 or 4 floors to this building. And I see this woman in like a white dress staring back at me crying.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, oh, my goodness. And I could see her face really clearly. And then she kept wiping her face like she was wiping tears. And then I could hear the crying. And I just drove away.
So did you drive away because you were scared, or?
It was, yeah, I was like, it wasn't, I was more like, oh, okay, like mystery solved, and I knew I saw it, and I was driving away just because I was supposed to anyway. It was like the end of the thing, and I was heading home. But it was almost like she wanted to say goodbye, or like I was holding space for her or something.
Aww.
It was very interesting.
See, that's like such a sweet story, though. It's like, oh, that's such a sweet story. I know, like, in the moment, you probably didn't think it was so sweet.
Yeah,
but,
I was like,
how
yeah,
sad.
It was very
know.
sad. Now I wish I could have, like, given her an energetic hug back then, but I was 16.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I get that completely. It's so weird because, like, today, if we were to look back at these situations, we're like, okay, so I would do this differently now, and I would experience this differently. But at the same time, it's like, oh, it makes my heart, I want to go back to that place so I can, like, talk to her and be like, hon, what's wrong? Are you okay? Do you need help crossing over to the other side? So that's a sweet and sad story. She must have wanted you to see her, feel her, and experience her somehow.
Well, that's what I would ask you, like, I'm not so sure, but you have more experience with that than I do. And I feel like that's what she wanted was like, I was like a highly sensitive, empathic kid. I had abilities I didn't really know about at the time. And maybe she was like, oh, wow, I can connect with you. And I was like, oh, I don't know that you can. But, and it just kind of like, some things happened.
Yeah, see, I feel like it was actually her way of connecting with you in that moment because, one, I have no clue why she would have been crying other than the fact that, like, something would have happened to her, like, in life, obviously, that made her sad or something like that. When we talk about spirit that, like, cries, I've actually come in contact with somebody at an investigation that I had to bring home with me to help pass them over to the other side. And she was crying, and actually that was related to a psychiatric hospital as well. She actually ended up getting pregnant by an orderly, and they terminated her pregnancy. When she actually had a live birth, but they stole her baby from her and they killed it. And she was so devastated, and it was almost like she was in this place of constantly looking for this infant and trying to tell somebody her story. And so when I hear something like that, it's almost like she was waiting for somebody to tell her story to, and she thought that you were safe for her to do that with. And that's what that sounds like to me. She felt like you were safe to her. And so she wanted to open that door to you to say, hey, I thank you and I honor you for helping me as much as me helping you, because you seeing her in that moment also catapulted you into understanding that there was more. So that was part of your lesson in life to get you to where you are. So both of you helped each other in that moment. Even though you didn't hear her full story, that's okay because you saw her.
Yeah, and that's one of the only times, even now with the spiritual work I do, that I had such a clear auditory experience. Like, it was insane the way I could hear the crying, and it wasn't obnoxious or anything. It was just like a very somber woman crying. And I'm like, what the heck?
Aw. See, I think it's a beautiful story.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
She opened up to you in a way. It's kind of like, thank you, hun, for seeing me and feeling me. I mean, like, that's one of the things that I'm like, I get so passionate about, because can you imagine being behind that veil and being kind of stuck somewhere and not being able to get back over or get over?
No.
And like, this is your existence, and being essentially alone, because that's really what it is. They're essentially alone in the space until they can find that way to get back over there. And some of them stay for reasons, some of them can't get back over for certain reasons. It's just whatever. But if she was crying, there's probably so much more to that.
I know. I always think back to like she had a heartbreak, or like her love passed away or something. Like I always feel like when I think about it, that's what I feel or see a little bit or associate with it. I'm sure our listeners are curious with this too, if you're willing to share, has been your experience with helping a soul or a ghost cross over? Or like, what do you have to provide? What does that look like? I know it's different for each, but maybe you could share with us a little bit of that process for you.
So it is very different for each individual person because so many people die under different circumstances. You can be dealing with anger, you can be dealing with resentment, you can be dealing with hurt, grief. There's so many different things. I will talk about one of the ones that I can remember. It was a kid who had killed themselves, and they actually were stuck in this place. Because essentially they didn't want to leave their parents behind, but then their parents moved. And so their parents kind of left them behind almost in this space. And it was a really sad situation. And when I came, it was just like he downloaded all of this information to me. And it was just he had such a sad mental state of mind before he committed suicide that was never addressed. And so he actually needed counseling and therapy prior to getting crossed over to the other side. And so what I tell people is that just like in our time, in our life, it's really kind of the same situation over on the other side. So like if you know that somebody needs counseling, you can bring forth angels that specialize in counseling. You can deal with angels that are psychiatric angels that will help them psychiatrically come to terms and understand not only what they did, but also the things that their parents did and how they did things afterwards or whatever's happening and taking place. And then there's almost this space where you have to invite family members also over to the other side. It's an actual process. And sometimes it can take a long time. It's not something cut and dry. Just like humans that take a minute to heal, so does spirit. The difference is that spirit has a more I don't know how to say it, open set of people working with them. Like we have counselors and therapists that see through this realm, and spirit sees through every realm. And so it's so much easier to give them information and download information to people from their side because they see all, they live all, they can download all. However, it really depends on how open the spirit is to receiving what they're giving. Because when you cross over, you still have that ego. You still have that part of you, that piece in you that is still that mindset. And so if you're stuck for some reason, it's all going to depend on how much or how quickly you want to go over to the other side and let things go. So I always tell people, the struggle is real for you here, but please don't feel like your loved ones are in a bad place because they might be struggling also. Just understand that healing is healing. It doesn't matter where you are. And so essentially we're healing with them. And that's like so important, I think, for some people to hear, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people listening or that resonates with a lot. I even earlier, just like random things come into my field, and I don't consider myself a medium. I'm not saying that skill won't come in at some point, and I have little things. Like I had a client yesterday who asked me about someone, and I had all these like yellow and orange flowers coming in, and then I found out she was like, the person who had crossed was really into like nasturtiums and all of these like orange flowers, and they did their whole funeral in it and all kinds of stuff. So that was kind of a cool experience for me. But those are newer things. And I, realized that so many people's connection to their spiritual awakening and spiritual growth is through, mediumship and the loss of loved ones and connecting with them and truly finding out and understanding and believing that there is, so much more on the other side of the veil and that our loved one's energy is still with us. That's question I have for you: if a ghost or a soul becomes a ghost, can they still connect with their loved ones spiritually and energetically if they're a ghost, as opposed to fully have crossed over?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. The connection, it's so weird because that's actually been such a thing. That's been a topic. It's funny that you asked that. Synchronicity. That's been a topic actually in most of the readings that I've had this week, with people wanting to know and understand that their spirit loved ones on the other side still have that same conscious connection with them. And it's, how we talk about cords, cords that we create, that's really what it is. We are a piece of, and you understand this, we are all a piece of each other. I'm you, you are me, and we're all a piece of each other. And so that can't be detached. And so the love that you have for somebody here, it literally goes over to the other side and vice versa. And that's the connection that keeps us together. And so there is no breaking of any bond. There can't be a breaking of any bond because we all are made from the same cloth, so to speak. And so we always have them with us in some form or fashion. It's just learning to tune in a different way.
Beautiful. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So we do have a caller that I am going to take with a 541 area code. Let me see if my computer wants to actually work for me.
Hello.
Hello, 541. This is Crystal. Who am I speaking with?
You are speaking with Camille in Oregon.
Oh, how awesome. In Oregon. That sounds like a fun place to be right now. So what are you calling for today?
And I hope I got this right. So I do have some supernatural story that I can share.
Ooh, yay.
Yeah. So let's go back. Catholic school, about maybe 6th, 7th grade. So we had my childhood best friend, very sweet girl, but didn't really pay attention in class. So she zoned out this one afternoon, and she drew a Ouija board on her notebook paper because rather than do the lesson. And I guess her family had been practicing the Ouija board after school. Okay. So when it came time for break or lunch, she shows us this paper and says, hey, this is what I did. This is what we do. Well, I had always been taught, okay, don't do this. Don't practice this, whatever. But I didn't know why. But I said, well, the girls are going to do it. I'm one of the girls. I'm going to participate too. So we put it on the little table. Another child got her earring, a hoop earring, and used it as a planchette. And we all gathered around, but it must have been about 7 of us, so too many to put a finger on the little earring. But we all gathered around in a tight circle, and as many as could put their little finger on it did. Well, of course, a bunch of tween girls, it did start to move. Everybody got so freaked out, didn't know what to do. We just kind of bolted, panicked, balled up that little piece of paper, threw it in the trash. Okay. A few weeks later, we're still in our playground. What is this crumpled up piece of paper at the other end, at the opposite side of where our lunch table where we tried to do the Ouija board? They found the crumpled up, Ouija board out of notebook paper way on the other side. Well, how did it get there? We don't know. We threw it in the trash. No. Well, I can say, I can't speak for everyone else, but at the time, my grandmother was giving me like $20 a month allowance. I could use my discretionary to buy whatever, magazines, candy. I went down, and I don't know if it was $20 or $5, but I had my money in my little pocket, my little uniform pocket, shortly after this experience, and I lost my money. And each girl who participated in that, they either, if we didn't lose a couple bucks, something else happened, a little bit of bad luck happened. Yeah. But do I believe in that now? I mean, since then, I have owned a Ouija board or a handmade wooden spirit board. I've gotten it to work with varied success. Okay, I mean, I don't really, I no longer believe that just this one thing will bring bad luck to me, or no, I don't believe in it like that. But in that moment, that childhood experience, whatever we did something.
You did something.
We did something. Yeah. And we never did it again.
But see, it's funny because like you look back on that now, and don't you question yourself like, hey, was it really something that happened, or did we do it ourselves, or what was this? Because there were other, like we talk about, things that happened afterwards that would make you say, okay, maybe something did come through, or maybe something is here. And maybe it was just spirit trying to get you guys not to do that, considering you were in a Catholic school.
Right.
So it could have very easily been, because it wasn't anything horrible that happened. We're not talking about, people getting hit by trucks or anything, but there was some creepy stuff that followed you guys afterwards. So it could have easily been your guides, and I'm going to say more yours than anybody else's, trying to teach a lesson and not to open doors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, it's really funny because your guides are stepping through right now. You are very open, and I think you're very open. But they're also making me feel like there are some things in life that you just won't walk through. Like that whole door being open, you just are like, nope, not going to do that still today. It's like, nope, because you don't know what's on the other side of it. But at the same time, you are so intuitive with your life. And just keep using that, because you have made some great decisions based on that intuition and that gut feel or that gut vibe that you have. And so sometimes we have to get taught a lesson in following the rest of the people, because you're not a follower, you're a leader. And so that was their way of saying, no, pun, you take those reins back, because you're the one in charge here. So it's kind of fun.
That makes
total
sense.
That story.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having this platform.
You are wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, sister. Oh, that was so awesome.
She's so cute. I absolutely love her energy. It's so funny when we get callers, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, their energy is just so wonderful. She's just a big hug is what she is. She's just a warm person. So, okay. So I do have like another caller, but I'm not exactly sure. I think they've been on hold since before the show started. So I almost want to say that I think they're here listening to the show like always. I don't know. What is your gut on that? I feel like that might be what it is.
Yeah, probably, but we can check real quick, because
I can check them.
If you're ever mobile, you can always call in from your phone and just listen to the show on the phone, which is really cool. So sometimes people do that. So we'll check in with them, see if they have a ghost story or some comments or questions. And if not, then we'll keep on going. It's cool, too. All good here on Heart Over Ego Radio.
So I have 347 area code. Hello, 347.
Hi.
Hi. Are you holding the talk, or are you listening? I'm so sorry. I'm bad at this.
I'm doing both.
Awesome.
I don't know if I have a ghost story. I don't know if I recall. I guess things are ghosts. I don't know if I would call it a ghost story.
Okay. Is it a spooky Halloween story? Or something that, is in alignment with what we've been discussing?
Yeah, well, one day I was, I don't know why, I decided to, take pictures of my room, right? And as I took pictures of the room, I started to see shadows in the room. And one day I happened to take a picture of my window, and there was, a distinct face in the window. And I sent it to people, and they were like, yeah, I could see that. Everyone could see the face in the window. And one time I think I was burning, I think it was a white candle. I wasn't sure what kind of candle it was, because I've heard of scrying. I don't know fully what it is, but I looked into the candles because, the candles have like a liquid pool at a certain point. And then there was this man's face in the candle. He almost looked like John F. Kennedy Jr., but his face was in a candle. So I don't know what, these sightings were.
So my question is, did it look like the same gentleman? Or do you not remember? Was it too distorted, I guess, to remember? Because what they're telling me right now is that you couldn't really distinctly say that it was the same because they were standing differently. Does that make sense to you?
Well, yeah, one was literally in the candle. So one was literally like, once a candle, the top of the candle melted, it's like a liquid pool or whatever at the top. So I literally saw a face in the candle. So I didn't see the whole body. I just saw his face.
Okay.
So then it wasn't necessarily the same day or the same time either.
Oh, no.
And
no, different time.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
So I'm going to tell you, I think it was actually the same guy. I think it was the same gentleman that you were seeing. And I think that he had to do with one of the houses that you lived in. And it could have been the house that you saw him in the window. But did you move, afterwards?
No, I want to move now. I'm trying to move now. But
Are you in the same house? Are you still in that same house?
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. So do you know any of the history on that house, just yes or no?
No, but
Okay.
I don't know.
What I'm going to tell you, what I'll tell you is what I'm receiving, okay? There is an actual gentleman, and I actually don't think that it was in that house. I think it was outside of that house. However, you are a home to him. Your energy is a home to him. And so I'm going to say one of the other houses, he's an elderly gentleman, how I see him. And you might be seeing him in his younger form because spirit can come through in their younger form. That's fine. But I think that he was actually an elderly gentleman that had COPD or emphysema prior to his passing. Because how I'm receiving this is it's almost like he's having a really hard time breathing, and he's making me feel as though that he comes, and I'm also going to tell you, I almost think that I'm wrong on this because I think, do you have a grandfather that has passed that had a hard time breathing or like a pneumonia prior to his passing?
No. I had a grandfather who passed, but he had
Did he have a hard time breathing before he passed? Because what he's giving to me is liquid in my lungs, and almost a wheezing sound is how he's giving this to me. Does that make sense to you prior to him actually taking his last breath?
No. I don't. I have no clue.
Okay.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. He had you had triple heart surgery, and then you get like an infection or something, like you could live or die after it. He had a surgery, and then I don't know if he got a bacteria infection or something after the surgery. And that's how he died. But
I would ask, and I don't know how open people are in your family to talking about this, but I would ask if you know whether or not he had a hard time breathing prior to, because he's making me feel like I have a ton of bricks sitting on top of my chest, which is hard for me to take in breaths, okay, which would kind of go hand in hand with what it is that you're talking about. If it was the heart, the chest, that makes a lot of sense to me. If he had something, and was it sepsis that he got afterwards? Because he's making me feel like my organs kind of shut down one at a time. Does that make sense for how he actually crossed over?
I have no idea. I was like 17, 14. I don't know.
Okay.
He had like a
tell you. He's just wanting to say he loves you. He's coming through. He's giving me head to toe numbness, which means that we're in a sleep type state prior to our actual passing. And what he's doing is he's giving you love in your life because he's also giving me some ups and downs, which means you personally are going through some ups and downs in life right now. Struggle, not necessarily, because you get through things very, very well with yourself. You are a very strong, very independent, very, very, I don't really know how to put this into words. You just handle life the best way that you can. But he's making me feel like it's because you've never had a choice not to, okay? And so life has kind of thrown a lot of curveballs at you. But please know and understand, whoever this gentleman is, he is giving me separation in life, which means like even though you were 14, that means that you were kind of separated from him in his life. I'm literally not getting into that right now because he doesn't make me feel like now is the time or place. But he gives you a lot of love, and he also is making me feel like essentially you're kind of the black sheep in some of the decisions that you're making in your life right now. And people aren't necessarily on board with some of those changes. So please just know that you're making life decisions based on your needs, your happiness, your wants, and really what your dreams are going to be going forward. And he just loves you very much for the strength that you have in life. So please know that that's who's coming through for me. I don't think that the gentleman that I'm seeing at all is who that was. I think Grandpa's like, nope, let's talk. So I do want you to,
no, that wasn't him.
Like,
that wasn't him. That wasn't him. But,
no,
but you are spot on.
So like, just know that the face wax guy and the mirror guy or the window guy is not the same as Grandpa, but at the same time, he took this as his opportunity to come forth and give you some love because he really feels like you need it right now. So, yeah, I wouldn't move out of your house. I just think that you have a big heart and a lot of energy.
No. I need to move out of. It's not. Oh, I'm not moving out because of that. That was like, no. I seen those faces and things. That was like a while ago.
Good.
No, I'm moving out because I need to move out, and
okay.
I need to
you
be
make
like
that move
everything. Yes, everything you said was spot on with what I'm going through right now.
Perfect. Well, I'm happy you called in then. I'm happy that I actually answered your call. I'm sorry, I'm horrible at this. And when I see people waiting for a long time, I'm like, oh. See, thank you, Mandee.
You so
she was
much.
the one who was like, yeah, let's do this.
It was an honor holding space with you.
You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Story.
You too, ladies.
She was super cute, too. I was like, wait, who is this Grandpa coming through? This is not who the candle guy is.
I know, we're supposed to be having a spooky Halloween spectacular, and we're just like, oh, we just love everyone, and we just love all the ghosts, all the people.
Well, I am going to get us back on track because I think I'm going to know. I think I know which one. It's the one that still to this day makes me like, what in the world?
I want to hear Crystal's ghost story. Crystal's a ghost investigator, so everybody just knows, and you do this for a living. So if something scares you or did, and they communicated with you as a young child, it was normal for you, right?
It was pretty normal for them. Well, see, communication is different because I did that. I couldn't actually talk one-on-one with them. Everything came through in like all at once. And so I didn't know how to kind of like channel one at a time. So it all just was like a whole bunch of people coming at me, like being in a room and it closing in around me. That's how spirit was for me because they'd all be like, blah, 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 telling me these conversations. And that really made me like, nope, don't want to deal with this. This is really terrifying to me because it was overwhelming so much. And so it got to a point where I was like 9 or 10 years old that I wouldn't sleep in my bed. I had bunk beds, but every night this crazy lady used to come and like tuck me in. She was terrifying. She was an old lady. She was terrifying. But I would sleep on the floor next to my door with my head outside of my door and the light. There was like a light on a nightstand right there. And I still do this to this day. This is like a coping mechanism that I haven't broke myself of, but I cocoon myself in my blanket at night because I don't like to be touched, even though I don't. And now my guides know that my room is my sacred space and like nothing's allowed to mess with me in my bedroom. Like that's my time. So I don't generally have spirit in and out of my bedroom at night unless there's really something important to say. But as a child, it was like I could feel people touching me from behind and coming at me from behind. And so that blanket would protect me. And so
totally, that's invasive.
That was like one of those things. And my mom would go to sleep and turn off that light. And as soon as she did, I'd like pop out of my cocoon and go and turn that light on. And then I'd be right back in my burrito is what Ben calls it. And so that was something that I did as a kid because it was so much. There was so much coming through. This actually takes place when I was 18. And it was on Halloween, funny enough. So my mom used to tell us scary stories. My mom also is very open to spirit, very intuitive herself. But as a kid, they lived in this haunted house. And this was like a really creepy haunted house. And she used to tell us these ghost stories because we loved them growing up. And she would tell us there was her. She had 2 sisters and a brother. So there were 4 of them all together, and they used to sleep in the same bed because their family was very poor. And in this house, every single night around midnight, she would hear somebody coming up the stairs. And it was like this really, I mean, like it's a long story, so I'm going to try to shorten it up a little bit. But she used to tell us how it was like the most terrifying thing ever because it was like super slow, somebody coming up the stairs, and you could hear this man's boots on each and every step because it was a really old house. And then she would start to see like the glow of this lantern form, and then she herself would try to get under the covers and stay away. But every night he would come in and he would kind of walk around the bed over to her side, and he'd like stand there. Well, she would talk about, you know, his breath and how he smelled in his hands and all this other stuff. Well, me being a teenager and my friends knowing that I like ghosty stuff and I always have like cool stories to tell, I think they all thought I was a liar, and I just made these things up off the top of my head. I don't think they thought they were real ghost stories.
We've all been there.
but they were like, oh, Crystal, do you have, we were trying to figure out, we were at Denny's at midnight, or almost midnight. I think it was like 11 o'clock or something. And we were trying to figure out what to do with the rest of our night. And I was like, ooh, you know, I have something we can do. We can go to this house. And now keep in mind, at this point, this house is dilapidated. It's like condemned. All you can see, it's on this vacant property is what I last saw it as. So there, everybody's on board. We drive out to Charlotte and then Eaton Rapids, which was about 15, 20 minutes away from where we were. And then we get to this place and we pull up, and it's right around midnight as we pull up. I think it was a little bit afterwards. And I told them, I said, okay, so around midnight or shortly afterwards, you'll walk down the driveway, which was a 2-track dirt driveway. And by now we had like waist deep weeds. And all you could see was this rickety old broken picket fence in through the weeds kind of sitting there. And so there were 3 others other than me. Sorry. There were 2 guys and another friend of mine named Emily that was with me in the car. And so we were sitting there, and Emily and I were like, nope, we're not going to do this. Something in me was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going out there. And by the time we got out there, you could see where the house had fallen. It had collapsed in on itself. So there was kind of a little ways that you had to go, probably about 30, 40 feet that you had to go down the driveway to where the house had collapsed. And so the 2 guys, they were like, okay, yeah, let's do this. I think I cut myself off. You could see a lantern appearing if you watched. So I told them, I said, if you see the lantern appearing, that's the guy. They go out there and they're jumping on the boards and they're like lifting up this house, like all this stuff. And they're like having a heyday out there. Next thing you know, Emily and I see this light appearing off in the distance in this field, because this is literally in the country. There's nothing around it. There's nothing. We're in the dark, because
Here comes the lantern.
And so we start seeing this light appear. It was really dim at first, almost like a candle. And we're like trying to see, because, you know, it very well could have been, I mean, it's October 31st, so lightning bugs aren't really a thing at this point. But we were like, maybe it's a lightning bug. What are we seeing? Do they have a lighter out there? And we were trying to ask them questions, but they weren't answering anything for us. And we couldn't hear them. There was nothing. We couldn't hear them at all anymore. So it was like us sitting out there with crickets on the road, and then we couldn't hear anything happening anymore where they were. And so soon it was almost like this light kind of was going up above where the weeds had grown, and there was this creepy freaking mist. I can't even make this up. There was like this mist going across everything. And we could see it kind of bobbing closer. Next thing we know, the 2 friends, the 2 guys, come running out of the weeds like bats out of hell. I mean, they are like, start the car, get the car. And we're sitting here and we're like, what? And, you know, we all jump in to this vehicle. I got into the driver's side. This isn't even my car. This is somebody else's car. I got into the driver's side, and like, we go up to this stop sign. I'm getting ahead of myself. While we were getting into the car, the owner of the car was like, no, move over, like pushed me out of the driver's side because it was a big, long bench seat. So I moved over because he just wanted in the car. Next thing we know, there was something that hit the trunk of the car so hard that the car actually bounced. It moved down. Like, it hit so hard that it was a huge boom on the back of the car. All of us freaked out. He took off driving back to where we live, which was not very far away. And when we got into Charlotte, this was like an old 90s car. So you know how they have the lights that were on the back and faced the back of the vehicle, the brake lights?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So there's condensation. And in the condensation, when he put on his brake lights, you could see 2 handprints on the back of the trunk. Okay. So this is not where it ends. This is funny enough. Like, this is not even where this ends.
Oh, here we go. Get ready, guys.
House. We get to the other woman's house. We get to her house, and we were all going to stay there. But I had to get up and go to work the next day at 7 o'clock. I had to open a store at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, I've got to go to work. I went home terrified. Like, I literally, legitimately, and I know what it is now that I was feeling. I didn't know it at the time, but he was following me. He followed me home. And so I went to go to bed, and every time I would go to bed, I would see his face come right up to my face and start screaming at me, and I could smell his breath, and he had like missing teeth, and his face was terrifying. So I got up. I'm crying, like I'm sitting here freaking out, like what the hell? I thought I was going crazy because it was like I couldn't get past that state where you're trying to go to sleep, but you can feel it, and then every single time I would get into that space, his face would be right there. So I called my friends, and they were like, oh, just come hang out with us. And I tried to come and hang out with them and tried to sleep, but it just wasn't working. So literally got no sleep, had to go to work the next day. I'm sitting there. I was freaked out. Okay. And I'm sitting here and I'm like throughout my day, and I'm like, okay, it was really slow. It was a Sunday. And so I called my mom, and I was like, okay, Mom, I said, so this is what happened last night. Like, so you remember that house that you told me about growing up, and we knew where this house was. We had passed it all the time, and my mom like still hates that house. And this is something that like she still talks about, this adventure.
Like, why did you go there?
And she was like, well, no, actually, I was like, we went to the house last night. And she goes, what house? And I said, the house, the house that you stay in when your dad was working, because he was a farmer. And so he was working on this farm they had the whole house given to them so they could work on this farm. And she goes, that house is gone. And I go, what do you mean the house is gone? No, it's not. I was just there last night. I said, the house fell down, but it's still there. She goes, Crystal, no, it's not. There's another house there. That house doesn't exist. The driveway doesn't exist. The fence, nothing exists, Crystal. What are you talking about? You must have been at the wrong place. I was like, no, I wasn't. And then I explained to her what I saw, and she was like, well, yeah, but I'm telling you right now that house is gone. I was so pissed off at her. Like, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, no, it's not. And I asked her, I said, well, what did the guy's hands look like? Because she used to talk about seeing his hands. And she was like, well, it looks like, he had rheumatoid arthritis or something, because his hands were twisted. So each knuckle was twisted. So each one of his fingers were going in the opposite direction almost. Because when the handprints were left on the back of the car, that's what it looked like. The fingers were all like twisted almost. And so I was like, what did his hands look like? Because I wanted to, kind of compare what she remembers to what we have going on the car. And so I hung up on her because I was furious that she was telling me this lie, because I knew what was happening. And she was like, no. So I actually called a different friend, because the 3 friends that went with me the night before were not going back with me. They said, absolutely fucking not. So I got some other friends to go with me that I told the story to. And we got to the house and where we were the night before, and that house is gone. Completely gone. So I'm like, what did we experience? It was like a time weird. It was definitely something. It's still to this day, I'm like, how the hell did that happen? Like, how does that happen?
These are the moments I incarnate for. That is so cool.
It's just so strange. How does that happen? And see, I took up so much of our time. I took up like 20 minutes for that story. I'm sorry about that.
This is great. This is our Halloween Spooktacular special. Can you tell on Heart Over Ego Radio how, to wrap it up, did you end up, did the ghost finally leave you alone?
Actually, he did. Once I went back, I went back and I actually said, I was like, okay, this is done. I literally emotionally closed the book on that, and I said, you're not allowed to talk to me anymore. You are not allowed to be around me anymore. You need to go away. And so guides, being who they are, they stopped that communication flat. But I think that was his way of saying, leave it. Like, don't go back there. Like, this is done. It was just terrifying. And I can still remember everything about that night. It was so fresh. Mandee, how do we find you? We have 40 seconds left.
Find me on Facebook, /The Alchemy Sisters. That will have a connection to all of my other things. And you can find me here on Heart Over Ego Radio on Blog Talk Radio.
Awesome. So you can find me at midmittenmedium.com and or Mid Mitten Medium on Facebook. Pretty much that's where you're going to find me anywhere, because that's who I am. Thank you, Mandee, for this wonderful episode. It was so fun to share this with you.
Thank you. We could go forever. This was great.
You have a great night and have a fun weekend.
You too, sister. I'll hold space for you in my heart. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night, everyone.
Yep, bye.